everyone, I'm Caroline and welcome to my home on the hillside where I love to do all things art and craft. I got these curtain rings and I thought I'd show you today lots of ways to use up old curtain rings. I got these from a charity shop, or you may call it a thrift store if you're in America, and I got them for £2 for all these curtain rings. I had no idea what I was going to do with them, but set myself a challenge to see if I could think of enough projects to actually use all these curtain rings up. And I think I have. Oh, I've just remembered. I've got these ones as well, metal ones, and I've got some idea for those as well. So let's clear all this away and start with my first project. For project number one, I'm going to use this frame and this backing paper, and I'm going to use my white curtain rings. Now, I'm going to use the white ones. That's a grey one. What's he doing in there? I'm going to use the white ones because I'm going to try to save time. I've got a lot of filming to do today, so I didn't want to paint anything unnecessarily. These are the right colour. I'll use the white ones. I've got this frame. Now, this isn't the right colour. This is grey and it's a bit tatty. So the first thing I'm going to do is take out the picture that's in there. It's not a very nice one. And the first thing I'm going to do is give this frame a little rub over. Now, this has already got some cleaner on it because I've been cleaning things. So I'll just give that a rub over just to make sure there's no dust, because now, well, the plan is I was going to paint it, but it's not too bad, is it now, with a rub over? Let's have a look. I think I may leave that frame grey. Oh yes, I quite like it. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is put some backing paper into this, and the way to get the perfect size backing paper is use the back. So let's assemble the frame back up, and first I'm going to put this in place, which is a nice snug fit. Then the useless spacer that I thought would be the right size, but it isn't, that didn't fit, so we pop that in there. And we can't even use this spacer to hold these little legs because it doesn't quite go to the side, so we're going to have to put the glass in that order. Now, be very careful when you're doing this. I would recommend really you go and get yourself a piece of cardboard instead. Now, the curtain rings have got these little screws in, which are a bit fiddly to take out. I did look at whether I could use whole curtain rings and go right up to the edge, but they're not quite the right size. And I didn't have time to go and rummage in the charity shops to find one that was the perfect size. So I thought we'd just make an interesting pattern. I think that's got a really lovely farmhouse look, but a modern farmhouse look. I think it's a combination of the florals and the lovely crisp white and the grey frame. It's absolutely beautiful. Now, the biggest problem is going to be getting these straight. So first thing I want to do is make sure the grubby side, if there is one, is down. There, they all look nice and clean. And now, well, I could either keep them together. I thought that may look a little bit too much like the Olympic rings, possibly. Maybe it's just me. I thought they looked nicer spaced out. Now, we could space them out completely like that. But I don't think that looks right either. If you're a very accurate person, you could measure this out absolutely immaculately. I'm not. I'm a very clumsy measurer, so I put some string around here and here, 1/2 inch from the top and the bottom, so that I could line up the curtain rings, and a pencil just happens to fit nicely in the gap. So the next thing I'm going to do is glue them in place, and I'm going to use my glue gun. Pop my pencil out. Snip the threads off, and there they are. So now I've got all my white buttons, and I'm having a look to see if I've got 6 interesting ones that I could use in the centre of these. So I could use that one, and that's a nice one. This is a really interesting one. It's more like a buckle. Use that one, and let's have a look what we've got for the top row. There's another one of those. And I don't think clear is going to work. No, not really. You can't see it, can you? Got that one with some glitter on. There's a small 4-holer. Oh, I like that. Yep, I think I'm going for the buttons. So out with the glue gun. And I'm pleased with that. And let's see what that looks like up on the wall. So for this is quite simple. Again, I'm not going to paint these, and by not painting these curtain rings, it just makes these ideas so quick and easy to do. So now, put some hot glue on your curtain ring. Try to make sure none goes near the outside. It doesn't matter on the inside, you'll hardly see it, but try to keep the outside a bit clear of glue if you can. Whoops. And then what I'm doing is lining up all these little holes. Now, if I was a really fastidious person, I would make sure that I'd filled all those holes and painted over the top, but I'm going to put them all in one place and then I can hide them if necessary with an embellishment. Embellishments are marvellous. Just add one ring and then another ring and then another ring. Now take a bit of cork and draw around it. But make sure you're pointing your pencil or whatever it is you're using inwards, underneath the curtain ring, as tight as you can. And now cut it out. Cut to the inside of the line as well, because you don't want any of this sticking out if you can help it. Nice woods of glue around the outside, and then pop that on. It's much easier to do it with this last curtain ring actually not attached. You could do it just directly on there, but I find it easier to do it like that. And then just join the top of the vase onto the bottom. Now you do have the option at this point to paint it all. You can still fill in the little holes. So now you just need to remove all your hot glue spaghetti at some point. And if you wanted to, you could paint the bottom of this. You could paint the whole vase in a different colour if you wanted to. You could have just taken some time and painted this top grey one a different colour. You could have even alternated the different colours. And now you've got a really useful little vase that you can put some flowers in and put a lovely display inside it. Let's have a look what that looks like. For this idea, I'm going to make some mini wreaths. So I had this idea sent to me by a viewer. Thank you ever so much. It's been great fun thinking about what sort of wreaths I'm going to make. They'd be perfect for Christmas, but I'm going to do some on a spring theme. Now we've got this hanger here, which for this wreath, I'm going to leave this on. I think it's going to suit it quite nicely. And I'm going to make it really basic, simple and pretty. I think I'll need these now because this is quite fiddly. So I'm going to work out where I want these and just glue them in a little tiny bouquet on the side. While that's cooling off and setting, I'm going to work on a little bow to go on the top. Ribbon here, so I take my little finger protectors off and just do a nice and simple double loop bow. So there we got a very simple, beautiful wreath, and it all depends what it looks like, what you put on it. I put some flowers. There's a little bit of hot glue I'll need to clear off there, but I usually end up with hot glue where it shouldn't be, and a little bow, and look at that. Let's try making another one. And this time I'm going to take this hanger off. I'm sure there's an easier method. And now I'm going to hot glue this ribbon onto the wreath. or the ring. It's a ring at the moment, but it will be a wreath. Now I'm going to stick that there. So we've got a hanging loop that's made of ribbon instead of metal. I think that'll be quite pretty. I may make it a little longer and glue it on. I got these owls. They were 4-pack for 50p in the works sale. And I wondered if an owl would look good on there. I think I'll put an owl there, and I'll use a white button as a sort of moon. So I'm going to take this little sticker off because they're not very firm. I don't want my owl falling off. So that's another really simple idea to make a decorative hoop or wreath or ring, that's glue everywhere, that you can stick on a tree, on a wall, on a little display area, or you can just have it laying down if you wanted to. Either way, it's so lovely. Move that one up there. Let's make one more. Let's empty up my button jar. So I'm going to cover this in buttons. Now to make a pretty double loop bow, just make 2 loops and tie a knot in them. It sort of wiggles about a bit when you pull it tight, but that's because it's getting itself into position. Like that. And we need to be a lot smaller than that. And a blob of glue. That'll hide the thread and make it look very pretty with a bow on. So there we have another 3 ideas for making things with curtain rings. I've started preparing the next project by testing out if I could cut these curtain rings in half. And as you can see, I was quite successful. But the thing is, I need to cut all these, which is going to take a while. I've got my cutter here, which they said it would cut quite thick wood. I was a little bit dubious, but it actually did work. So the way I've been doing it is putting the curtain ring in, squeezing it until it hits the top as well. And that way then, you mark the top, but it won't cut through 2 layers like that. You've got to hit it to get it off. And then I move this to just where it won't actually cut the other side. And then snip, and look at that. I'm very impressed with this. And then I can do the same on this side where I've marked it already. Now you do need a fair bit of oomph. That is not easy, but it can be done. So I'm just putting those to the side. I'm actually thinking about it. I've just had a brilliant idea where I don't need to do that to every one of them, just to every other. So that's going to save me an awful lot of muscle power. So for every one I cut, I'll put one there that isn't cut. So the plan now is to make a chain with these. Now I've got myself some wood glue and my glue gun, because the wood glue is going to give these a much better bond, but the glue gun is going to give it an instant grab, so it saves me hanging on to each link for ages before it actually sets itself. So I'm going to take one loop and put 2 rings on. First of all, we put the wood glue on. Got my lovely Gorilla Glue here. They make some really nice glues. Just put a tiny bit on each side and then a little blob of hot glue, and then push them together. So now we're going to take this rounded end one and we're going to join it to this one with another cut link. So while that's drying, I'm going to take my heart and cover both sides with this buffalo print paper. So I cut up roughly the size so it's going to be easier to deal with. And now we just tacky glue the paper onto the heart, both sides. Get as close to the edge as you can so that the edges of the paper don't flick up, end up falling off or tearing off, and try to get the line straight. It's very difficult to do. Turn it over and do exactly the same on the other side. Just cut out roughly as close to the heart as you can get without lifting the paper that's stuck to the bit of the heart. So I'm going to use a nail file for this, run it along the edge, and it'll cut off the excess paper and also leave a really nice natural looking edge. Right, that poor nail file is beaten because it's not really designed for this sort of thing, so I'm coming out with the big guns. I've got my sandpaper. And if you need to top up any little bit of edges that are coming up, if you need to fix any bits of the edges, then go in again with your glue. Going to add a pretty button and a little bow. So now I'm just going to sand down the little bit of glue that's sticking out between the joins in the links of the chain. You can, if you want to, paint these white or leave them as they are if you don't mind seeing the joins really obviously. I've got a jar of sepia ink that I've had forever and I'm just never getting around to using it, so I thought, well, I'll use this. And that way then it'll hide any joins and also give a little bit of extra depth of colour to the rings. Now I should have really wore gloves, but I didn't, and I just check now to see, well, maybe it's washable or washable or whatever you call it ink, and it doesn't say, so I don't know whether I'm going to be permanently stained with sepia or not. We'll find out later. I'll wash my hands and probably need to scrub them to death. One word of warning if you're using ink: I've never used ink in a paintbrush before, and when you try just clearing the edge of your brush, it flicks everywhere. Look at the state on my desk. It's a right mess. It's going to take some cleaning too. Oh, right, so now I've got extra on my desk. Oh dear, this is turning out to be a little bit of a disaster, isn't it? Maybe I should have gone for something other than ink. Oh well, you live and learn. Let's just get this cleaned up and I'll be back. So now we know sepia ink does not come off a cutting mat. Right, so now I want to make something while those links are drying for the end, well, the other end. This is going on the one end of the links. Look, even that's got brown on it. It's everywhere. Right, we're going to have to ignore that, okay? That's a deliberate mistake to make it look more rustic. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. Now I've cut these pieces of fabric 1 inch wide. Because we're making browns and beiges and whites, I thought I'd put a mixture in of like creamy lace, some white linen, and this really pretty brown and cream fabric with strawberries on. So I'm going to get them all pretty much lined up on the one end, like that. and then cut the other end like that. Going to get a little bit of thread and tie this off here. Now I'm going to get some jute twine and tie up here. Give it a good tight tug. Now you can put some sort of big bead in there if you wanted to, but I'm not going to. I think it's going to be quite nice, a bit squidgy. So I'll tie a double knot to make sure it's going to stay in place. And then a little bow. Even that off, and now let's have a look, see if the links have dried. Yeah, I think they're dry, but I'm putting my scruffy cutting mat down just in case. I'm going to tie my tassel to the end. So now to hide that little bit of thread, I wrap some jute around the curtain ring and then fix it off with a little bit of hot glue and then snip the ends when it's cooled. So that end's looking pretty nice. Now let's go to the other end. Now we need to attach our heart. Now this has already got some jute on it, and I haven't really thought through how I'm going to attach that. Am I going to leave it hanging in a bit of a dangle, or am I going to put it quite short? I think I like the dangle, so what I think I'll do is glue it to itself just on the edge of the heart like that with some hot glue. So by making a raffia bow and putting it over there, it hides the join and also adds a little bit of interest to this side of the chain. So let's have a look what this chain looks like on my dresser. So this project is going to involve some smaller curtain rings and some bigger ones. Now the bigger ones are just going to be sort of donor curtain rings. They're not going to appear, they're not going to get star in row, they're going up inside this, which is going to be the base of a flower holder. Now I don't want to have this yogurt pot on its own because it's too flimsy, it's going to get knocked about. So by gluing these together and then popping them in the bottom of the flower pot or the yogurt pot, then they'll give it a bit of weight, a bit of gravitas. So I glue those curtain rings into the bottom section of my plant holder, my plant stand. And oh, that definitely feels completely different now. If I turn this one upside down, got a lot more substance to it. So now I'm going to make a stand with these rings, glue them together. I have to be a bit more careful now because I don't want glue going on the outside of these because it will be seen. And they're going to be painted so a little bit won't hurt, but you don't want big blobs everywhere. So now it's time to break out the paint. I'm going to use chalk paint because it's got wonderful sticking properties and I'm not going to have to rub down the wood or anything. So now let's get this painted. Now, one coat didn't work for me. Some people I've heard say that if you paint first of all with PVA glue and then paint, you'll only need the one coat. I put it on extra thick, hoping one coat would do. It's very bloppy, so now I'm just going to sand it down and then give it a run over with paint again. When you're drying your yogurt pot, don't put your hairdryer too close to the yogurt pot because you'll melt it, as I found out because I melted mine a little bit. It's a bit dented, but we won't look at that. So now I just need to get some darker paint. I'm using acrylic paint now, and we're only going to need a tiny bit. And we're going to just dry brush. And a dry brush is just using a brush that's quite dry. There's hardly any paint on it at all. So you'll need to get most of the paint back off, and then in the direction that you want the grain to go, you just brushed. And then wipe bits back off if they're looking a bit thick, and you're starting to get a wood effect. A wood effect takes a while to get right. I'm at the point where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Because I'm filming this, it probably won't. You can see I've got a bit too thick there, give it a wipe off, and the same over the whole thing. After you've added the brown, you may decide you don't particularly like certain areas. What you can do then is add a little bit of white paint to the brown paint on your little palette, and then get a medium colour and dry brush over it again, and it adds to the richness of the colours and also covers a multitude of sins. Now, I reckon this is starting to look like a weathered terracotta rather than a wood effect, but I'm quite happy with that. I think it's really nice. It looks like quite a Grecian urn sort of thing. So now we've just got to decorate it up. Now, the base looks a bit ugly, so what I'm going to do is get something to put on the bottom to hide what's inside this base. So I'm going to get a little piece of paper, nothing special, a little bit of craft paper. Draw a circle around the size you want, then cut it out inside the grey line, because it would be better if it's slightly smaller than the actual size of the outside of the base, but only a tiny bit. Right, I'm going to use some hot glue because I want to carry on with decorating this, and I don't want to wait for any other type of glue to dry. I'm very impatient. So just run a fine bead of glue. It doesn't matter if anything goes on the inside, as long as it doesn't splurt too badly up the outside. And then stick your paper in place. Now we need a bit of oasis to put the flowers into. As you can see, I got this from a charity shop for 50p. Poke it in and look at the mess. Now, I don't have a lot of things like lambsure foliage and things, but I did have this ivy, so I popped this in, and I think it looks really pretty. I'd like to add a little bit more foliage later, but for the moment I think that's fine. So let's have a look what this looks like up on my dresser. So this is me in the aftermath of a massive creating session. I've got myself in a mess, I've tipped my ink, but I've had such a wonderful time. And not everything I made is perfect, but that doesn't matter because I've enjoyed it. And it's the same for you too. I hope you get inspired to try some of these crafts with curtain rings. And if so, let me know how you get on. And really, don't worry if it goes wrong. Stick a bow on it, paint it over, or turn the bad bit to the back and nobody'll ever know. If you've enjoyed this video, then please give me a thumbs up, and it would be great if you could subscribe and join me in my journey through finding out lots of different crafts we can make, from the most obscure things to just general craft making items. I'll see you all next time, but until then, don't forget, have fun!